what then happens is in the middle of the bridge, they are all from earthquake cases where the ground liquefies. So if the ground liquefies, it liquefies to a certain depth. So if it liquefies to a certain depth, what we can see is that this pile will be this whole lot more unsupported compared to this one. Because in this case, there were similar loads at the top. But if it liquefies up to this level, this depth, you get this unsupported length. But in here, you get long unsupported length. And long unsupported length means a lot more flexible. You want to deform more. If it deforms more, the deck falls. Yeah? So that means those who did the design didn't consider all the different aspects of the whole design. So they missed out one load case or one particular scenario. And that governed. In earthquake is good in finding out faults in any design. In earthquake, they can find out the faults. Earthquake will find the faults, the weakest link, and the force will go through there. Right? The earthquake is very, it won't mercy you. You'll find out the weakest link, and the load and force will go through there and it will fail. Okay, so some of the examples. So you can see again, bridge in this case, this thing tilted by around 5 degrees. So the whole foundation. So probably this was not embedded to a deeper depth. So the ground liquefied and it sort of couldn't bear the load. So it tilted. And we can model. So what we learn in this particular next lecture and in the lecture afterwards, that how can we study these sort of problems. So we can study these problems by something called a PY spring approach, where we model the interaction by a set of nonlinear springs and how we take into account these whole big calculations. Okay? Is there any question? Now, let's go on to now another application of pile function. Another application is offshore structures. So if you look into these big offshore structures, tell me how much is the dead load there, any idea?
1,000 tons. 1,000 tons.
10,000 tons more than that.
200.
Top side. So you can see it's accommodation block here. There's everything, the cinema hall and swimming pool and everything is there. There's typical work there. And you can see that the crane, all the operations, the lifeboat, etc. It's quite a bit of massive structures, right? Now, how are they supported? Also, other applications are they're quite recent application. It's again wind farm. So those who didn't do the wind farm energy course, so for them, a great thing is you have got a column like a tower, and a tower you put a turbine, and those turbines can be quite heavy. For example, 8 megawatt turbine is around 550 tons. So at the top level, you have 550 tons of mass sitting that contains the generator and all the things. So you generate and the gearboxes here. Around 8 megawatt has got 550 tons. Can someone tell me what's the weight of one of the blades? Any idea? The blade? How much one of the blades weigh?
150.
33 tons. So the 8 megawatt turbine has got a blade diameter of 164 meter. So basically, you can replace a nuclear power plant by, say, if I think about one reactor of say 200 megawatt, so you can replace by 30 megawatt or by 30 turbines by nuclear power plant. So you can replace the nuclear power plant by 30 turbines. Think about a huge amount of concrete, steel goes in there to generate 100 megawatt of power. If you have a wind turbine, you only need 30 of these structures to generate the same amount of power. And the other thing is that if you look into the debate going on about making the whole, there are no diesel car, petrol car by 2035 or 2040. For UK, that means that if you assume that all the cars will be powered by battery or sort of also electric, you need 30 gigawatt of power to power the whole, fleet of cars, cars and vehicles. That means you would need around 10 Hinkley Point. Hinkley Point is about 3 megawatt, 3 gigawatt. You need around 10 Hinkley Point power plant. And each nuclear power plant will take you 10 years to build and construct. 10 years to only construct. So you start today, you'll start producing electricity after 10 years. It takes 10 years to build. But the planning takes another 5 to 10 years. The planning permission is a huge complex thing. So effectively, it's quite challenging to have a nuclear power plant generating that power to drive all the car. On the other hand, if you think about these wind farms, you can construct in 6 months. So start to end is 6 months. Because the foundation, you can drive a foundation a day. So you order a vessel, it'll come and do one sort of series of days, it will do the, sometimes they can do 2 in 3 days. So, even 3 in 2 days foundation. So they will do the foundations, get another barge, put it on the tower, and then the nacelle, connect it up. So 6 months, it's all done. In terms of price, can you guess what's the price of these ones? Any idea? Well, I think 1 gigawatt, around 1 billion. The price of the whole nuclear power, whole sort of offshore wind farm, around 1 gigawatt. I see the price is coming down. Currently, the price is, if you see that they're doing offshore bids now, the bids. So the strike price for nuclear is £92.50. £92.50 is the strike price. That doesn't include the cost to decommission. That's a huge cost. So the decommissioning cost of this nuclear power plant is huge. It's not done yet completely. None of them is done yet. Okay, and then, but the cost of offshore wind is now around 58 pounds per megawatt hour. So the price come down. The price, so it's quite good actually in terms of what's happening in terms of offshore wind. It's quite also you can completely take off the pile of the ground. So they have just decommissioned one of the wind farms. They can completely take the whole pile of the ground. It's quite good in that way. So here's one application, our foundation. So how does it work? So you see here, effectively, you have this jacket, what I showed you before, this big structure. It rests on the seabed. They're typically 4 legs. Each leg will have 3, 4, 5, 6 piles, depending on the location, right? So effectively, in a simplified way, this is the whole thing. Now, how do they put the pile in place, and how do they do the whole thing? Any idea how to do it? How they put the whole thing? Suction. They are large piles. The piles are 48 inch, 62 inch, 60 inch. They are long, 100 meter long. So, how would they install these things? So, what they will do, they would carry the jacket in a barge, so that they will float the jacket on a large piece of wood, bring to the site, tilt it over, appending it, bring it down to the seabed. These are big steel plates called mud mats. They are like steel plates, large steel plates. So they act as a shallow foundation. It will hold the jacket only in the seabed. So they put the jacket on the seabed under these large steel plates. And then there are sleeves. Through the sleeves they will put the pile through. So they would drive the pile through these sleeves. Yeah? Once they have the pile driven, there will be a gap. There they would put a grout around it, grout to hold it all together. Yeah? Yes? Now, so how they install jacket, note the mud mat. So that is the foundation. That's the shallow foundation. So you put in, you are having a large steel plate, right? And that acts as a shallow foundation temporarily when you put the whole pile in the ground. So if you see, that's this sleeve here. That's the sleeve. So you can see the sleeve. You can see the sleeve here. That sleeve is here. You put down the pile there and you drive from the top with a hammer, right? And the sleeves are typically 8 meter length. Okay. Now the question is that, what sort of load you can apply, what hammer you can apply. They're quite a large length, right? So there are lots of things you must calculate, right? There's a question of this in your tutorial sheet, the sort of how to calculate the buckling or how much is the amplification and other things. So what you also need is a lot of calculations to make sure that things don't break in offshore. Why? The thing is that you ordered all these piles, these steel tubes from some source. If things break, you have to wait for a few days or weeks to have a second one coming from another place. And offshore, the daily rate is, so these vessels are £500,000 to mobilize. That means, suppose if you say that I want a vessel that can do all these things. I want it in the month April 15. So fine, my vessel is now working in Korea. I'll charge you £500,000 to mobilize the vessel there. Then I'll charge you per day 300,000 pounds per day, right? And I can give you for 2 weeks. So you basically thought that you found out actually it will take you 2 weeks to do the whole operation. You order for 2 weeks, 15 days. So they'll charge you 15 days times that money. But in the meantime, things fell, broke. You wait for something. But they will leave after 2 weeks because there were another appointments somewhere else. So your job is half done, a huge claim, lot of money, because, so that's why we have to make sure that in offshore you don't take any risk, undue risk. So you do every calculation so that you take, so you can do the working time. Offshore time is very, very costly. If you lose a time, then you wait for another vessel to come, you wait for 6 months to get the next vessel. So 6 months, a huge loan is getting interest, right? So sometimes a company can get bankrupt because of these sort of things. Yeah? So you got to make sure that things are done in a bit more perfect way. So here is some sort of examples about how things are done. Often, if it is a shallow water, you can have a shallow water instead of appending it. So you can have a simpler crane to do these operations. So it depends on the site. Here's one example. about here's a modern way of installing it. What happens is, if you drive a pipe, the conventional way or the most used way is you bang by a large hammer. So you put the pipe and you make a big hammer to drive it. And that sort of things are causing a lot of noise, and that's hampering the wildlife. And some codes of practice, like the German code, they say you can't have a noise more than this level, because that impacts the environment, ecosystem. So here's a new technique. They're putting the whole pipe by vibration, just applying vibration, and it goes through. It's called a vibro method. It is one of the very new method. So what they do, so they can use a large vessel to append the pipe, put the pipe in place, and this vibro hammer can put the whole pipe down in the cement without any impact hammering. Yeah. So basically, there's a motor that turns like a double-acting actuator that creates a vertical force downwards, and you can put the pipe in place. And what happens, you also do the same thing to take the pipe out. So currently, in any project, what they're doing is that if you have an offshore platform, once the life is over, you can cut the pipe and you can leave it there. But the new laws are coming in place that you have to take out everything after you're done with the project, or take everything out of the seabed. So in this case, you can reverse the operation to take the pipe off the ground. Yeah? So take a small break. Okay. Let's take a break.
Yeah, it's fine.
Where are you going? Oh. Oh, going somewhere? Nice.
Oops. I don't think.
For 5 days.
Break?
No, actually. No.
Yes. Student done it?
Relax.
Which one are you using?
Hold and then very stressful for them. So I can have because they need to just relax.
This is question 4. This is question plastic.
This is plastic.
This is question 4.
You mean outside of
No, outside. I was wrong.
maybe
3. Because we choose different size. It's fine. It's fine because we have different size. How far
Which one? Okay,
this is the spec.
I'm going to open.
Here in South Altenwalde, nearby the German coast of the North Sea, we develop installation technologies for offshore wind farms further.
There is something wrong. I just asked him this question. Let's take it up. What is not happening? That's what I did.
He said we shouldn't take it.
So when are we going to be given the coursework? Yeah, we should take it up.
Almost there. Just waiting for one document to come.
Okay, no, no,
Okay.
Okay.
You'll find out. Don't worry.
This is
For the coursework.
What? Formula sheets, you mean?
during the exams. So if
You didn't
he's-
inform that?
No, you ask him if he's going to give us, then we don't have to memorize this. But if he's not giving us, then we have to fix it.
But it's impossible.
It's not impossible.
Oh, look how the one is bad.
It's not really easy. You still have to count. So for how which one for count?
For five? Okay, but I mean, maybe not understand. Memorize all the I like this
This one.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like
He's interesting. But I don't like concrete. I have to sit with
it. You don't like concrete?
This part.
it. Really.
I don't like it. I left the class.
He left.
No, we want to
Have you seen this before?
No,
This is for the all are recorded.
this is the coursework.
Yes, I think you should take it to photocopy it.
You start,
I'm not.
but this is the coursework.
No, this is the first part. This is the first part of the first part. So, you see what I say?
Really?
I don't know if it's this one.
Oh, really? This is the.
This is the first part. He's going to give us another one.
Oh, we will not do the old, like the old one.
No.
Oh my God! Wait, I have to ask him
Yeah, better.
this question.
He will shock you. He's doing that. What was that? What was that?
So whatever what is required, we will give you equation.
You don't know shot.
Oh, so we're not memorizing.
Okay, you must know the methods. You must know the methods. You must know what to apply.
Hey, this is the my question. How to know, for example, here we have no
Short. You know what short is? Yeah, I give you a short. Right.
This is question. They gave us a question, then the sheet is.
I have the idea.
They use a quasi, the number, not whether you get to wait.
Yeah, but it is what clear.
Yes. So why they have it?
Or maybe you mean
Footing weight is a more. Weight is but it is a more. So it's the first one. This is the simplest.
Okay, and this is the first one.
But if you go for square footing or a one is for one is this. This one is this. So you dig the ground. Dig the ground and you see so you use concrete. And then you put the wall. So that's like a continuous. This is a footing. So this is like continuous
it's not very confused.
But this one, the other formula is for the stripping. This is for if you have a one footing there, the other footing there, another footing there.
You should not have me there.
And then the column here.
No, I'm not adding the I'm not adding the beam and concrete substrate yet.
Beam there.
I'm just adding the post.
It's not a strip. There's a beam. This is the beam.
I'm not sure.
So this will
Because we have to know the size of this.
okay, so this would look like that. We have that is beam. We only excavate there. Only excavate this
So
one.
this beam.
And then another one footing. And there you put the beam there. That's the wall. You put another beam there. That's the ground. And you put the wall. In this case, you don't have continuous. So you only dig this the foundation plan. In the foundation plan, you only cut these areas. But in this case, you do the whole excavation.
So we have a wall.
This strip function, this strip footing function. You see? Make a strip. Say for now, you put a building. You put a building. Just one. In foundation plan, how you excavate. For strip footing, you excavate all around.
So this we are not
You excavate all around that. And then you put the hole. In other case, you only excavate 4 corners. 4 corners. Put the footing up and then you I apply frame building, or it could be a single different angles, clay and sand. Sand is clay.
Oh, okay, so if I have sand, I can use this.
Yeah. Okay, sand, you won't use this. The sand, use this. Clay, use this. So, if you see only sand, you use NQ, and you don't have sand for sand C0, so you don't use this. You use this.
Okay, but they use so it's only when we have the given, so it depends on the given.
Yes, yes. So soil, look, if it's a clay soil, if it's a clay soil, you have 5 cells. So you only get this one. If it is sand, you use
Yeah, because I want you to finish before I break.
Drain means sand. Drain means sand. Undrained means
Oh my god. So I'm doing so the first one.
yes, so this understood or we understand?
I have an appointment.
Basically,
Together.
yeah, start now.
Yeah, but the problem that is causing this water. Yeah, because now it's like
No, I know that tomorrow
bridge of it's not like a unique, it's like
They will give us the we have everything up in books, by the way.
maybe they made a sort of violet.
Every time he does change something.
But all of them is up in book, up in notes, been handed out, and everything. But no, it's not easy. The hardest, they will not ask you about the equation. They are not expecting you to solve the equation, they are expecting you to find. So really, what is the result of I must. So when will he post give the course for replacement? Let me cry. Let me start to cry. Yes, when we
Understand.
Oregano. It's okay, no, it's amazing. No, it's just
Can you explain this?
Is it hard?